First up, can I just get your overall reaction or response to what the minister had to announce yesterday? Lots of commentators in this sphere not really satisfied that we still have a little bit of confusion surrounding that unabridged certificate for children.
So what the minister's announced is that South African children will still require documentation to travel, and obviously this proves that the parents are in fact the parents of the children, and it gives consent in cases where there might be a divorce or a separation. So those documents will still have to be carried by South African parents and their children. With respect to foreigners bringing children into the country, it's still relatively uncertain as to what foreigners will be required to produce, if required by an immigration officer, when they're in South Africa. Now, bearing in mind these people are spending money on hotels and on bookings and bringing groups into South Africa, they need more certainty than this vague situation where an immigration officer could randomly stop somebody or profile somebody because they come from a certain country and then require documentation. What are they going to do when they're in South Africa and they don't have that documentation with them? So it's not certain yet.
Okay, certain for South Africans, but not for foreigners. And if that uncertainty continues, surely it will affect whatever the government is intending to do by these visa requirements changes.
Well, certainly. It's probably because the systems required are quite expensive, quite intensive, quite expensive, and require lots of training and a wide network, and government simply doesn't have the money to roll out these big systems quickly and with expensive equipment. And that's been part of the problem since these changes were announced in 2014.
Now, in terms of migration, movement of people are either, in this particular case, I think the focus is on tourists, because we see, for example, that visa applications have been made much easier for Chinese and Indian tourists. There's also some waiver agreements for 19 countries across Africa, Middle East, Europe, and the Americas. How do you view this? How does the organization view this? Is this a good thing for us?
So those waiver agreements are diplomatic agreements, and these are set in motion between the diplomats at high level. What it does mean is that people can travel into South Africa more easily. So they wouldn't have a formal process where they have to apply at an embassy. They will come in, particularly on tourist and business visas, by simply holding the passport of a country, like, for example, some of those others that they mentioned in the list. And that just reduces the administrative burden on the embassies and consulates, and it means people will probably travel into South Africa for those reasons because it's simply easier.
Okay. Now, we know that the President Cyril Ramaphosa last week, as part of his economic stimulus package, he mentioned this particular issue in how it can help to boost tourism. But the visa requirements as well, in terms of the critical skills that what we need in the country, is going to be revised by April next year, according to the minister. Now, from a migration perspective, I mean, how would you see this? I think our economy needs as many critical skills as it can in order to grow.
So there is a critical skills list, which is not as comprehensive as it should be. And it was put together in haste, and one must be fair to Minister Gigaba. This was put in place in 2014, just after he came into office. So he's had to live with a list, I think, that they, as Home Affairs, have not been satisfied with either. There are a few problems of definition on the list. So quite a few of the professions don't have professional bodies, because we don't have that type of arrangement in many bodies in South Africa. So the process in certain categories is difficult for people who we need in this country. The new list must, however, take into account the issues regarding the real needs of the country. Maths and science teachers are not on the list at all. And there seems to be some political issue with unions not wanting foreigners within the workforce. But whatever it is, it needs to respond to the needs of the country. The other thing is that they will have to accommodate the fourth industrial revolution skills, which government is talking about a lot and wants to implement, so South Africa is able to create employment and economic growth in this sphere. And the list will have to cater to those skills, which are brand new in most economies.
Thank you very much. Leon Isaacson, Managing Director of Global Migration Group in our studios in Cape Town, responding to the new visa requirements or changes that were announced yesterday by Home Affairs Minister Malusi Gigaba.